Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And I think that, that is something that we need to, sort of try to target as quickly and efficiently as we can, so we can help that person.
Sure.
Whether they've given us enough time or not, we still have to try and deal with it. So
people often have very unrealistic expectations, and some academies will kind of pander to those expectations. Learn English in 6 months.
Right.
What does 6 months mean?
English in 1,000
No, what does 6
words.
months mean? I mean, yeah. And what does learn English mean? As soon as you start to analyze this, it becomes it's a meaningless claim, which is why it's used in marketing.
No, and what ends up happening is that they're just going to sign out after 6 months angry, thinking that they wasted their money and time.
yeah.
Okay, anything else?
And not being able to complain about it.
especially not in English.
I quite like the it's something that I do concentrate on in my classes anyway, even with business English, is the details of alphabet numbers and like email address, and they all look at me like I'm completely mad, and I'm like, no problem, can you tell me the alphabet? And they're completely wrong. It's like, imagine, right, tell me your email address, and they're not even close. And you're just thinking, these are people in, we have some people in some very serious positions in terms of their job, and they're not able to deliver these very simple sort of premises. And it's from what I kind of like the fact that you stressed the point.
Yeah.
And timekeeping, Bobby.
Okay. As I was just saying to people who just come in, at a very at the crudest level, and when I'm interviewing students for a news analysis again, right, this is the time we have available for our course, whether it's like 10 hours or 100 hours. How would you divide that between general and English for work? You put a line there, and they'll say 50-50, or they'll say 75, they'll say 100% or 90%, fine. And that's helping them to focus that in vague terms. And another thing we're doing with the needs analysis is basically, if this is GE, General English, and this is ESP, I mean, we have a kind of, often what we get on this continuum is something which is sort of here, which is like a GBE, General Business English. Yeah? And there are course books which are very good at looking at that market. The International Express series, which you haven't got, which you should get, is one of the best for that. That's OUP. And Cambridge have a similar series, similar-ish series called English 365, which is another interesting 50-50 type series. And something that we've mentioned before about the learner who says, I'm fine when I'm talking about our services, our products, but it's the cocktails, it's the dinner parties, it's the coffee break that terrify me. And that's that area we call socializing, and that's where. That, in a sense, that's where General English meets Business English, that area here, because you could be talking about your flight, you could be talking a bit about your company, you could be talking about, in my country, current affairs in my country. So all the kind of things we were looking at in the quiz, are the kind of things that people chat about. Sorry, Amy.
No, I just have a question. How much would you say like General English influences Business English? Because I have a lot of students kind of in the same position, and it's like, okay, either their General English is quite good or their Business English is quite good. There's very few who have like a mix. Would you say there's like, if you say you have your pie chart and they need to improve their Business English as a whole, would you advise, okay, even if your focus is Business English, you need to spend 20% of your time on General English anyway to be able to reach a higher level in Business English?
Yeah.
Is it like at some point it becomes effective, like you can never really progress with one without the other, for example?
What do you mean when you say General English? in that sense, yeah, because because I mean, whatever they're doing, they're going, you know, grammar's going to come up, you know. So whether it's whether we're looking at the use of the definite article or non-use of the definite article, or you know, use of auxiliary verbs, that's going to come up wherever you are. But I don't know if this answers your question, Amy, but you know, in a sense, if the course is more business focused, it's easier to add general English stuff than vice versa.
I'd say you have to kind of take into account business etiquette as well, because how you do business in Spain is completely different to how you do business in, you know, for example, in London, you go to a meeting, everything is decided in the meeting, and then you go to the pub and you talk about football and everything else. And this came from a student, and they said, whereas in Spain, or here, you know, they go to the office, and you go to the office just to show that, look at my nice new leather. Let's go to the bar and do business. And then you go to the bar, you have some beer, you have some wine. You know, like the business dinner here, you would have wine with the lunch, whereas in London you wouldn't have, you know, you'd be drinking water, everything would be formal, and it's only after you go and have a beer and then you have to like socialise it. So you have to think about, you know, to take that into consideration.
I mean, there was another optional 7 here, which is the whole cultural aspect of this. You know, attitudes to time, attitudes to decision making, and where, you know, and you know, where do you talk business? Do you talk business over lunch? Do you talk, you know, do you go, you know, do you circle the topic and then finally say, oh yes, now let's talk about it, or do you go straight in? And questions of hierarchy, you know, do you have to refer to somebody as Herr Doctor every time you speak to her, you know, her, sorry, and so on. Yeah, but that's a whole world in itself. Okay. I mean, one thing that you know, I would add to that. I mean, I think it would be really good for you to take out a subscription to The Economist. Fantastic. You know, just you know, some of the articles are, you know, the articles themselves are written in, you know, they're written very beautifully, but they do require a high level. BBC is very good for, you know, short, simple text. Yeah, but of course you can debug them. We're talking about that later. But you know, The Economist has these little sections here, these little snippets with, you know, great little texts, you know, which you can choose for your learners.
The only negative or setback to The Economist is, I think you're right, they have some great stuff in there and very interesting and very, you know, to the point for many people. The vocabulary is a big obstacle. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so let's move on to course design. Could you look at the next page, please? Just look at the top part there.
Approach is the course design, or course design?
The one that says course design, the one that looks like this. Yeah, I didn't know how to draw diagonal vertical arrows on this, but basically they go from it goes from the top to the bottom. Needs analysis feeds into course design through a process of negotiation, often with the human resources manager. And course design feeds into these questions. You know, what kind of course are we doing? What material are we selecting? Or what material are we designing? What kind of methodology will we use? So we may decide that we're going to be using a general English course book, or you may decide you're using an exam course book. You may decide that you're using what I would call it, you know, general business English course book, or you may turn, which is skills based. You know, this series, I think this is really good. And the English, or a sector specific thing. The English for football is in this series that I mentioned earlier on. Yes, and there are about, OUP have about 10 of these titles. Cambridge also have about 10 titles. I think the Cambridge one, CUP ones, are actually even better than the Oxford ones because they include quite a lot more speaking. And you know, these always come with a CD. But these slimline books are really good.
And don't lift it.
I think actually the most beautiful thing is an OUP book, English for Medicine. Spectacularly beautiful illustrations, heaps of lexical work, very, very well organized, and also full of questions, sort of general questions, ethical questions. Fantastic course book, English for Medicine. Okay, so. And at the bottom of that part there, you have the course evaluation and the ongoing needs analysis, because you may, it's a bit like sometimes it's a bit like when you start the university year and you put your name down for every club and association that is offered, and you realise, well, no, what I actually want is this. And so, it may often be necessary to renegotiate the needs analysis. So in part 2, could you please match those 7 syllabus words to their definitions? A wee task.
No. When live all over the world. And what may seem a glamorous setting to one.
Like as a teacher.
May seem a glamorous setting to one is quite.
I think I got this one.
Yeah, this is to say, I'm pretty dumb.
That's how I'm feeling right now.
I think I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna go out and pick up truck and strap a boulder. That's what I feel like right now.
What's done?
All right, we're so off.
We're way off.
We're way off.
Sure,
Way
off. Could you, all right, we've had the individual phase. Could you try to put it together yourself, please, as a group?
Okay.
If I can, make a suggestion, start with
Do we have all
Yeah,
day?
start with the easy ones.
Okay.
What do you do?
Easy task-based.
Oh, as everyone, okay.
Okay, what do you put for functional?
I put the last one.
You put the last one?
I put 5.
I put 3.
I mean, if
I
it's,
have situational. Focuses on what they do the target language.
wait, why don't we have a look at the
Okay.
definitions, then we look at
Alright.
the,
Yeah.
not that we
Yeah.
exist. So, based on concepts, units are designed to teach students how to talk about things like length, sequencing, and time. I said that this one was notional, just because you have to have a notion of length,
Yeah.
time, No, I'm not
I
sure.
put notional
I
on
put
that one.
notional as the one which just focuses on what Dennis can do.
No, yeah, Tess is right, of notional.
Okay.
Notional syllabus
That
is.
one I put under situational.
Okay, so if you try to kind of visualize that, okay, so maybe you're looking at something which is time. What would that include? That would include things like how we tell the time. Yeah, it would also include things like how we conceive of time in terms of present, future, and past. It would also include things like time adverbials, like 4, 10 years, in 5 minutes. Yeah, for ages, forever, once in a blue moon. So it would include all of those things. So it would include some lexical blocks. It would include some grammar concepts. It would also quite precise ways of conveying information.
Okay, so second one,
Language is
organized.
organized around the context in which it is used, place, time, play. I put situational for that one.
I put structural.
I put structural. You put structural, you put
Okay,
situational. I put situational.
Alex is right. And okay, think of those units you've seen in course books where it's at the restaurant.
You're pretty dumb.
Okay, so if it's like if it's the restaurant unit, what's it going to include?
Food.
Yeah, food lex is the food. It's going to include also things like first course, second course, main course. It will include things like for paying.
So,
Yeah, can you bring the, okay, check if you're American, bill if you're British. Yeah. It will include things like delicious, tasty, hot, cold. If it's an ELT course book, it will always include something about somebody complaining. Yeah. It will include things like what functional exponents you use to order. I'll have the, steak tartare, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I have, or after you've ordered, I'm having the situation. Yeah. Yeah, so a typical thing is at the hotel reception or at the airport where you analyze all the interactions which are probable at the airport. Yeah.
So it wasn't structural.
No, situational.
Okay, so the third one?
Third one.
Oh, wait a minute.
Task
So I got that one right.
Yeah.
I think it's task-based, just because you're
Yeah.
given.
You
a
put task-based,
specific thing.
I
Yeah.
put functional.
The third one.
Third one, yeah,
What you say, Alex? You said
functional.
you're right again. Okay, so if we so
Should the big balls on Alex.
okay, if we take that, just take that functional area of
Shh, come on, guys.
focus, please. That area of apologizing. So can you look up, not down for a moment? Yeah. The answer is not on the page. Okay, let's take this area of apologizing. I'd like each of you, starting with Tess and going round, to give me a different way of apologizing. So.
I would like to excuse the fact that Robert was late. I'm sure he had to go for something from Veritas.
That's not an apology.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, that's one.
Please forgive me.
2. You would go around this.
Stole this.
Sorry.
Right. Please accept my apologies.
I'm really sorry.
I would like to apologize for the fact. I apologize.
It won't happen again.
Please forgive me.
Yeah. Can you think of any more?
It's your fault, not mine. My sincerest apologies.
Yeah.
I don't know how that could have happened.
Yeah, I really must apologize.
No.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Did you say I'm so sorry? Okay, right. So what you just make, these are all exponents that we as native speakers all have available to us, and we deploy them according to the situation. You've been unfaithful to your spouse. You don't say, please accept my apologies, it won't happen again. Maybe you would say it won't happen again, but or you're late for work. Or I don't know, you've accidentally spilled something on a stranger's t-shirt, Yeah. So
It won't happen again.
It's not my fault.
what we need to do as teachers is, is to equip our learners with, a minimally or maximally appropriate range of those, which are situationally appropriate.
Yeah, it's like making suggestions and
Exactly.
all the set phrases.
Yeah. So agreeing and disagreeing. Yeah. Or conceding a point, like fair enough, or you've got a point there, or well, all right, if you, or whatever, Yeah, let's keep going.
Next one, grammatical.
Yes.
Okay, so this is a typical way that, general English course books are organized.
Okay, next.
I put situational, which is definitely not structural.
Task-based.
No, we didn't task. I know we have this.
Oh, yeah, I would say task-based. I put task-based for something else.
Yeah.
Alex is on fire today.
Task-based.
So this.
I'm expecting another pen now.
I've got
Wait, to note that.
only 3 days to go. Right? So task-based, and this is used quite a lot in business English, because obviously what we're doing when the needs us is we're analysing, if we can, the task that the learners have to perform on a regular basis, or will have to perform. And so what does that involve? It involves maybe it involves answering the telephone and passing the call, or maybe it involves answering the telephone and solving a problem. Maybe it involves giving information about prices. Maybe it involves chasing up some people who haven't paid.
Okay, the next one,
Lexical.
You're excused from the whole course.
Lexical.
Yeah, lexical. And the last one, structural.
Yeah, lexical, structural.
Yeah, Alex. Come on, applause. Come on.
Does anybody have any questions about any of those?
No.
All right. If you turn over, I'll have you just to read the next page.
PLE.
Previous learning experience.
What's SDS?
Students.
It's way better than STD.
Not at the beginning, you mean.
In terms of how many teachers are working on the course, what's the minimum and the maximum you would recommend for, I guess it would depend.
Minimum is 1.
Yes,
That was
but
the easy
like,
part.
let's say if it's like, I don't know, a 30-hour course, or maybe it's a 50-hour course, depending, I guess it would depend on the course and I guess the profile of the group, and
It will often depend on the timetable. Like if this is something we get, especially in summer, where you get a student or a group of students who want to do 5 hours a day, and that cut, I see this document on the screen here of your timetables, through in the office there, and the person who's doing the programming looks at it, it can't be one teacher, because the teachers are not available. Also, to what extent is it valid to put one teacher in front of a student or a group of students for 5 hours? So you may decide that the logistics require that 2 teachers are going to be working this, or 3 or 4.
but at some point, I think it's too many. If you have too many different types of teachers, too many, in terms of efficiency or consistency, effectiveness of the
I
class.
think it depends on it's divided, no? Maybe you have one teacher who's doing like role-play situations, the other one is doing telephoning. Well, it's divided like that, there's no overlap, but yeah, if everyone's following the same book, then it's like, okay, what did you do?
It may be that, but more often than not, it's simply a question of time. So this teacher, teacher C is available from 11:30 to 1. It's programmed to us on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and another teacher is doing that time on Tuesday, Thursday. This is more a programming planning decision. But the thing is, if you have more than one teacher or multiple teachers working on a plan, then the timing. No, okay, more than the timing. The coordination between the teachers has to be followed very closely. But more than that, even is that each teacher has to know exactly what he or she is doing, what he or she is expected to do in that time, because the person coming in afterwards may depend on that.
Yeah.
So in other words, the planning has to be, whoever does the planning has to be a lot tighter. So the metaphor that occurs to me is an orchestra. You may be playing the oboe, and if somebody only recorded what the oboe was doing, it wouldn't sound very good. But the oboe is there in the context of the violins and the harps and the violas and clarinets. Yeah. So the teacher may well have the impression, well, that doesn't seem to make much sense, but it does make sense for the learner or the learners. And so the teacher needs to have the global picture, and realize what his or her part in that is. There's another thing that I do when I'm planning courses like that. I have another document which stays with the class with things that came up. Things that were not in the plan, but we had to work. I had to do a little spot check on the difference between other and another. And so you'd write that there. Okay, so there's a little thing we did. And so the next teacher coming in or the teacher coming in the next day can say to the student or students, tell me what's the difference between another and when do you say other and when do you say others? Yeah. So a record of spontaneous input.
I was going to ask that because we have quite a few classes that aren't necessarily organized courses, but maybe some private classes that change from teacher to teacher. What would you recommend in a case like this? Because this is something that I wanted to address for the next school year, because it's like we do have many students that change around, and I think it hasn't been a problem, but I mean, for the sake of the students, I think it would be better to have better organization of this. So would you recommend having a binder with, I don't know, a sheet about the student, and then at the end of each class, you write a few comments at
the end of each class or at the end of the course?
No, you can imagine Monday with Sung, Tuesday with me, then Friday with Alex.
Okay.
I mean, that sort of teacher, because a student that doesn't care which teacher they have, but they can only have class on Wednesday at this time. Okay, who's free? Sung. Okay, so Wednesday with Sung, and I'm also free on Friday at 2 with who? Okay, with Daniel. So and imagine they don't coincide or whatever. Like, how could we transmit this information without the student being like, well?
I mean, you say that, but we do have some. I think that the organization isn't too bad. I mean, I know that Bobby and I tend to share a couple of different classes.
Yeah, if we coincide and hey, I
this
have a
person
question.
is better sort of for the conversational, this person's better for the grammatical or whatever, and we sort of.
Yeah, but those are still really
coordinate
general
those.
things. Like if they have a problem with past simple, probably Robert wouldn't tell you practice past simple, unless you guys bump into each other.
You guys are always practicing, but for example, Bobby and I shared Monday and English all year, and I think that in general, our structure of what we did in class, what was covered, what came up, was quite well communicated between the two of us.
Yeah, but I think to have like a record of spontaneous grammar points or whatever, I think a notebook. There should be something that should be recorded, because let's say Robert and I have totally different schedules, but he and I are sharing teachers, and I don't see him. I mean, it happens that you guys see each other, but if I don't see him and there isn't enough time for him to communicate to me verbally, there should be some written record.
Surely that could just be in the end of you share the class, and
Yes.
you have the attendance, all of the things, and if you can see the class before, okay, they did this, I'm just gonna carry on.
Although sometimes you don't know they're going to share a class because something crops up. Yeah, Maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud, maybe you have some kind of intranet here where you can just make notes for each other. Or maybe I don't know, do you have a register where the students sign their attendance?
No, we have an online program which would work probably. For
Okay,
this.
yeah, because, yeah, I mean, the kind of thing you're talking about works if the teachers are physically in the same space often, but, you know, but you highlighted there's sort of something that happens to us, you know, when we have like 40 teachers, is that it's emailed to the other teacher, and the Director of Studies is CC'd. And I say it's not enough. It's not enough for you guys to talk, because the reality of timetabling is that, yeah, we wanted to give Robert this, but in the end we have to give this class to Amy. So, yeah, Robert has been orally briefed by Danielle, but Amy hasn't. So yeah, so I need to have something I can zoom forward to Amy so that she knows what to do.
But I don't think we have that situation particularly often. Like, we share classes, but we know that from the beginning. And
Yeah,
like,
I know.
For example, if somebody, like when I was ill, I wrote down the stuff for other people to cover. So it's not just like, okay, do something related to this.
Yeah, but I think, for example, Rafa and Laureano, like,
Okay, yeah.
and then Robert also had him at.
I had them on
and-
communication,
Yeah.
and everyone did
So,
something.
Okay, yeah,
completely
this
different.
kind of
Well,
thing.
just like finding a way to make it work.
Okay.
Which, okay, in
And
these
it's not a very
cases, yeah.
common.
Okay.
In this case, it's fine because they also just want speaking of it.
Anybody have any other issues arising from that list?
I got a couple of, the points that I highlighted were, number one, what's an internal phone?
What is an internal?
What's an
Like an
internal
internal
phone?
connection, I think, like Anna will say, I will transfer your phone to your call to desk. I would
Oh,
think.
right, so it's kind of like corporate office-y
Yeah.
stuff. Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So, okay, we have, yeah, we have lots of rooms that we can use for teaching where there are telephones. So if we're doing telephone practice, yeah, you go to room 4, can you go to room 6? Can you go to room 3? Okay, you two are going to phone each other, then, yeah. Yeah, so
Okay.
We need that.
So
No, that's a big problem for people on telephone. If you had some kind
Yeah.
of, do I
Yeah,
phone them on mobile and we
like,
practice them?
something like that.
We
would
need
be
some kind of
interesting.
way of doing telephones.
Yogurt pops and stuff, yeah.
Walkie-talkies.
yeah, maybe you can do it with mobile phones, whatever. No, but yeah, with some English work open group classes I have in the academy, because they're at night, most of the offices are empty. So instead of having them practice, they'll have hello, what, yes, leaning over each other's shoulders. You know,
They can see each other
you actually,
at work.
yeah, send them to different rooms.
Okay.
And they find that I think that's a very, very important kind of step on the scaffolding process, because you're giving them the support, you know, and as a teacher you can be listening and running from one room to another, taking notes.
How to use it.
Yeah,
The conference you.
but then they come back, you provide feedback. And then, hey, we could do the same thing again, or this time the B's phone the A's, or whatever.
So
We
it's
could
kind
have
of
something
scenario.
like if we had Skype on iPads.
Yes.
Because it's free.
FaceTime.
Yeah.
Well, everyone has an
Well, then
iPhone,
have
so.
FaceTime,
you
yeah.
just here.
Okay, and that you can do FaceTime voice only.
Exactly.
Daniel, something else that you highlighted?
The other things that I highlighted was, is email available as rapid and regular contact with learners? We have constant connection from the office to students, but like personally, very, very few. I mean, a few of them have my mobile number, or we have a WhatsApp group or whatever, and I'm just involved in that. I don't really participate in it, but I see everything that they write.
Yeah.
But there's not too much.
And so some classes that I have, I form a distribution group, and I'll send them messages. So it's also a good way for them to talk to me in English.
Right.
And also it's a good way for them to practice with each other, saying, hello everybody, listen, I can't come to class today because I have whatever.
Right. Yeah, I get a lot on the couple of groups that I have, but it's kind of there's a good a good confidence level there with the class.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of a good trust level.
Exactly. It helps to build, to make the group gel. But also, for people who can't come to class, who are going to be late, they get a chance to write something in English. Functional exponent, apologizing. Yes, I'm sorry I can't come to class today because whatever. They may, you're free to give a reason or not, whatever. But all right, I'm not getting the class, but I have written an email in English. A functional, transactional email in English, and I will get a reply from my teacher. Okay, Jama, okay, hope it's nothing too serious. See you on Tuesday. We'll let you know what the homework is. Right.
And just the last point I thought was quite funny was stamina. Is that teacher stamina or is that the student stamina?
Okay. It's teacher stamina because, if it's like 4 hours a week, 4 or 5 hours a week, whatever, and you're having to generate all the material yourself, okay, what does that represent in terms of your own commitment? Okay, am I having to spend another 4 hours a week on finding material for the student? How is that realistic? Can I keep doing that? Okay, it's that kind of question there.
So this is kind of sort of all relates to whether this person should be having material or
so
like a book or whatever.
Right. So we've decided that there is no course book for this class, so we're having to generate it. This year I've had some incredibly specific classes. I did the artistic director of the National Theatre of Catalonia, and everything we do is about theatre, literature, poetry, and I'm having to source everything myself.
Wow.
It's enjoyable, but
week on week.
yeah. And so on and so on. No, something's just slipped my mind. It was about the emailing to.
But I should make a comment on this email thing. Day one, I gave everybody my email. And my homework is when we have a conversation, drop me 5 lines about your opinion on that subject as an email. And we discuss those emails, writing mistakes, and I put that on the screen. I get all these emails and everything we put on the screen, and then we look at grammar mistakes in your emails.
It's exactly
that's my one. I remember.
That's what I was trying to. Yeah, exactly.
And we have comments on emails.
Yeah, cool. As a teacher, that is giving you gold material for class. So here is what they're writing in their emails. Let's cut and paste. Let's put this, create a document, put it up, or photocopy it. And so we're working on the writing exactly where the need is. So rather than just taking page 29 from a book like that, we're actually dealing with the issues that are arising from your own text. So in other words, the teaching and the need are actually meeting face to face. It doesn't happen all that often.
So cool.
Something alternative to like email stuff. I asked some students to keep a diary in English, and because from then they have like a natural progress.
Yep.
As long as they stick to it, and say okay, because you will eventually you will become bored of writing the same thing, and you'll want to change. So you can start in the past. Today was a good day. I went shopping, and then you can continue once you start processing. And okay, tomorrow I will, or tomorrow I'm going to, and the student has from day one a record of their progress.
Yeah, fantastic. And hopefully, after 90 or whatever hours of your teaching, they look back at what they wrote at the beginning and think, oh my God, did I write that?
Yes.
That's terrible. Yeah. No, but that's a measure of their progress, and that's fantastic. That's a record. Absolutely.
One thing in reference to what Smith was saying before, I started doing something similar-ish, but in a different context. I get my students to do a lot of reading, to do some reading at home, and then to give presentations about the reading in class. And then what I do is I write down the errors that they make. Now, I used to correct those errors in class, but it would take up a large chunk of the class. So what I do is after around 3 or 4 presentations, I send them an email of their errors and I ask them to try to correct their errors as homework. Then I project the errors on the board and I tell them to be like, okay, this is incorrect because da da da, that's incorrect because da da da. So it takes around 20 minutes, but I think it's really, really useful because they're working exactly with what they're doing badly.
Yep. Absolutely. I get it.
I noticed with a lot of my students, they all make nearly, all of them make the same mistakes. So actually, if you can put one guy, one email up, you can say, you know, I've seen this mistake in 6 or 7 emails, and they all learn from that one mistake. I actually sometimes don't even say whose email it is.
Yeah.
Put that text, and it's useful from one class even to another class, but this is a very common mistake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's all remove this from our database. You know.
Absolutely, I would echo that. But I would add something. Yeah. Also, yeah, as a profession, it's easy for us to develop a kind of tunnel vision for errors. Yeah, there's one, there's one, there's one. You pick out things that they've done well and put those up too. And say, hey, and by the way, you know, sort of, Maddie Chell said this, and it was really good. Or yeah, so also, you know, pick out good use of language too.
Positively.
Yeah, and say, hey, and this is a really good expression you could all use. Maybe.
I'm always happy when they use, you know, like the common ones like used tos and stuff like that, when they use it correctly. And it's like, finally.
Yeah. So yeah, rewarding, you know, what's good, not just, you know, it's easy for us to think, that's wrong. How many mistakes did I get? I mean, no. What, you know, how many things did you get right?
Yeah.
You know, what was effective? Yeah, let's look at that. You know, what was accurate? Let's look at that. Fine. Moving on. Approaches to course design. This is one where you don't have to match them because they are in the right place. But if you just read through that, please.
Squeeze this bit.
NA was?
Needs analysis.
Oh, okay.
Okay, does anybody want to make any comments or ask any questions about any of those?
I have a question. Principled lack?
Yeah,
I'm not sure what that
sounds good.
Lack of organization.
No. Principle. That means I will do what is I'll do what is necessary in the circumstances. I'm not going to follow any kind of preset methodology or approach. And I will. But whatever I do will be done for a reason. So I'm going to. It's kind of inspired in improvisation.
Oh, okay.
So this is Miles Davis improvisation, and in a sense, it's similar to a kind of dogma. You know the word dog. Similar to that, where what I'm doing can't be defined in those terms.
Right.
But I'm doing something. Everything I'm doing. I can justify. Okay.
Interesting use of the word stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, now that stealing is kind of just like finding other material. It's stolen. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like I'm saying that I wrote this and I'm pretending that I produced it.
You mean by like taking a photocopy from different books?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it means I'm not giving OUP the benefit of the sales of this book, but I'm actually taking the syllabus.
Right, okay. So borrowing from...
Using our resources.
I thought the word stolen was harsh, that was all.
Well, that's because you have written some books, so maybe that's why you have a different perspective.
Talk to an author, talk to a publisher about and they will think, no, stolen with a capital S.
Maybe cribbed is better.
I like the idea of the checklist. That's not something that I've done in any of my classes, and I think that is really good visually for the students also and for motivation, because I think that especially at intermediate and some pre-intermediate level students are like, well, it's difficult to see if I'm improving. If you have a checklist, you're like, what do you mean you're not improving? We did this, we did this, we did this, and we did that.
Yeah.
I highlighted that as well. I think, as a teacher, you go in and you know what you're going to teach and your aims of the class. But the student is just sat there with some material. I think that if it's reciprocal, it's fantastic.
Anything you can do to make the learner more aware of, more participative in, more proactive in the learning process is great.
The idea of checklist and modules, I kind of see them blending. Really.
Yeah.
It's sort of basically as you go through the module, you're kind of ticking off the things. I mean, there's some mild differences, but I saw them as the same, really.
Yeah. Especially for ESP, I think the simulation. But simulation, I think, for me, the way I interpreted it was it could be role-playing or even an actual presentation in the sense of, okay, for example, in business English, the students have an objective. Maybe they need to do a presentation or do have a business meeting in English. So you use the lexicon, you work towards that kind of presentation or role play or that situation as a target goal, and then you use that. Maybe you record it, you record the meeting, the role play, or whatever, their even PowerPoint presentation, for example, and then you give them feedback on it in terms of all the objectives that you set up in the needs analysis part.
It's like a more practical.
All that and more. Okay, that's coming up in a couple of minutes, so we'll see that.
The only problem I see with the simulation, I mean, it's totally subjective to the size of the simulation that you decide to do, but this, I think, would involve, speaking personally for my students, would probably involve too much work for them outside of the classroom to prepare something. Of course, depending on the magnitude of what you're looking at, but a little bit too much for them in terms of time consuming.
I don't think a simulation involves them doing more homework.
Okay.
Okay,
so you would say do the simulation or prepare the simulation in class?
Yeah. As we'll see in just a moment. Just one of those things with time. Just quite often what I need to present to learners at the start of the course, or increasingly to the human resources managers saying, okay, as a result of having done the needs analysis, what we decided to do is, 40% of the time is going to be on telephoning, 25% of the time is going to be on emailing. This percent, this is going to be on meetings. This is going to be on socializing. So you actually, you can actually say to them and justify, this is how we're going to divide up the course. So maybe, I don't know, maybe every morning the first hour is telephoning, or the last hour is telephoning, whatever. Okay. Or this is, revision of grammar and vocabulary, who knows? So chopping it up, is something that they can, is easy to understand. And also it helps you, it helps you when you're doing the actual class planning a lot.
I also like the idea of the planning meetings. Maybe not as a formal meeting, but I think that would be interesting, like every month, for example, to have a look at the checklist and the planning meetings, maybe just the first 15 minutes of each class, instead of doing the checklist in class, be like, okay, well, we did this, we did that, we did that, and that way for the students, I think it's also good.
Yeah.
And also for like lower levels, like as I said before, elementary, like we cover a lot of things in the class. Okay, we get this point, and then a few weeks later, it's like, well, we've learned the present simple and the past simple. Now I'm completely confused. So then having another time to be like, okay, we're not going to progress. We're just going to recap everything and then continue again. Yeah. Because I find by the end they're like.
Never underestimate the amount of time you need to give to consolidation and revision. We always do. We always underestimate it.
Because you're always just moving sort of through your book. And
Exactly.
That's like very relevant to lower or to
Exactly,
lower levels. I mean, once you start hitting the higher levels, that just kind of flows. You can introduce something, and you don't have that continuous exposure to different tenses.
And new information.
Slow learning. Go through that.
All right, can I ask you to write a one-sentence definition of assimilation individually?
Assimilation.
Yeah, in the ELT sense of the word.
Oh, you finished? No, I'm joking.
Simulation or assimilation?
Simulate.
Simulation.
Simulation.
Oh,
As in the Borg.
A simulation.
Yeah.
Terminator arrives.
Oh, I thought you meant like the fact that when students.
No, not assimilate.
Not to assimilate.
It's not assimilation, it's assimilation.
Okay, simulation. Okay.
Assimilation.
Oof.
ASSIM.
No.
Simulation.
Space.
This here.
Una simulación.
Una simulación, pero. Vamos a ver. ¿Cómo es posible que estemos teniendo esta conversación? Alex Smith's version. Thanks for that one. I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. Don't even know where to start that.
Mine is poor.
Like, really just properly nothing.
Mine, like I said, is quite poor.
It's okay to say I don't know.
No.
Okay.
When I've got nothing, I'm not just gonna write some bunch
Right.
of nonsense. I'm just gonna go, I got nothing.
Is anybody prepared to share with the group their definition?
I can, but.
Acting out the situation to improve techniques.
Okay, I'm not sure about acting out, but okay. Any more?
I put an act of possible situations.
I said creating or recreating a real life setting, but in a controlled situation.
That's a good one.
A project in which students develop as completely as possible a feasible idea for a business or real life situation.
I have putting students via role playing into situations they should be more comfortable with
Okay.
through speaking, comfortable with through speaking.
Okay, I put simulation is the student's application of the information or knowledge received in class to a real life situation.
Okay.
Fail! No one gets a pen.
A question that arises then from listening to someone, what's the difference between a simulation and a role play?
Yeah, well, I put role playing. I said that there's
For
synonyms.
me, role play is much more specific, and it's using for example, role play could be applied in like a 10-minute role play in terms of okay, you did a lexicon on a vocabulary lesson on legal English in a specific civil lawsuit case, and so the role play is using the vocabulary and the grammar that you use for that class in that. So the role play comes immediately after the lesson is my, whereas a simulation.
A role play is interaction between two people or more, whereas a simulation can be an interaction or something completely different.
And in a
As
role
in
play,
not
you're assigned your like the majority of the things that you need to say, the information you need to give. A simulation is more like natural. It's like, okay, this is
Simulation
the
is
scenario,
weird.
what happens?
But like.
Leaflets explaining this conversation are
Yeah.
available for you.
Yeah, but simulation, I think, for me, it's bigger. The student is in control. No, the role play is more specific. The teacher gives the specific roles. Whereas a situation, the student is more in control of their
Yeah, it's like you're
Dictation,
talking to the
yeah.
picture. This is the scenario. Okay, there's a complaint in a restaurant. Go.
Okay, tell us your.
What is the difference between a role play?
Okay, we've touched on quite a few things already that, you said, okay, yeah, a role play tends to be, part of a lesson and could be, could have a language focus, and it could be before you do some input, or it could be after you do some input. But quite often in a role play, the teacher decides, okay, you're the heavyweight champion of Europe, and you have just lost a fight, and you feel wretched. Now you have to talk to your manager. Whereas in a simulation, you have a kind of identity within the simulation, and what you feel, what you say, emerges from that situation.
Exactly.
So in a sense, nobody tells you what to think, nobody tells you what to feel. Your own feelings in that situation are what drives it. So yeah, it tends to be longer, more complex, and it can involve multiple skill things. You can even have maybe you can have role play within a simulation. But yeah, think of those business games, where you are, I don't know, you're competing with other companies. Yeah. And you decide what your tactics are. I mean, you may decide that you're the marketing manager or the chief financial officer of the company, whatever, and then you interact from that person. Okay, if you turn over and look at the middle section where it says note on simulations, there are 2 paragraphs there.
Is anybody else called?
Yes, you're called? Okay.
Is anybody else called or not?
Shall I
know
move
because you're
that?
sitting under.
Yeah.
Yes, so funny.
Banana, could you turn the AC off, please? Thank you. Just open the window, Smith. much test, just properly.
I got beaten up yesterday.
Excuse me, I walked in after I said I wouldn't be back anymore. All of the windows were completely wide open with the AC on full blast. I was just like, are you serious? And he was like, so I stopped by the room and I was just like, are you joking? He was like, oh, I completely forgot, sorry.
But that's, first you went to my office to see if I was there.
Well, you actually did leave the AC on yesterday. I just turned it off after. Yeah, you did.
Okay, read guys.
Okay, can we focus, please?
I think this is based on this definition, this is why it's like, this is more long-term goal, kind of like, okay, we're at the end of 2 months, we're gonna have this simulation, but to build up to that, we're gonna work on this, this, and this, and this.
It's kind of free will, isn't it?
Yes, but you need to give the students the tools to be able to navigate within that.
the simulation.
Yeah, to navigate within that situation. I think.
Yeah, given pointers rather than specific.
Yeah, exactly.
You're expecting a lot from the students to be creative, because a lot of people just,
Yeah, that's true.
they don't,
And often if you are like, I'm having a debate and
Yeah.
everyone
they're not
is just
creative
like,
enough to.
okay, I think this, and everyone's like, and I'm like, no, you have to disagree, like,
Yeah.
You're not doing all the work.
yeah, because otherwise they're just like.
But in a simulation, if somebody is less creative or less talkative, then that's fine. That's what is between a simulation and a role play.
Yeah.
In a sense, quite often in a role play, you're obliging somebody to talk 50% of the time. Life's not like that. You know from your own staff room, some people do more talking than others. From all your own classes, people are quieter. Okay, a simulation in a sense respects that, and you're not kind of pushing somebody to do more than they feel comfortable doing. And if some people emerge as dominant, hey, well, that's life too, isn't it?
Will we have some examples of good simulations that we could do in class? Okay.
All right, so could you just read the final 2 paragraphs? There is an acronym there that you haven't seen before, VOL, which is Vocationally Orientated Language Learning, which is probably a much better word than business English. And it's what the Common European Framework uses, VOL. Okay, don't turn over just yet, please.
Sure.
Don't turn over just yet, please. All right, so basically I gave the students a skeleton. This was a class, B2 C1 class, and it was a class with about 10 students in it. They were good attenders, and they had signed up for a 9-month course, about 100 hours. And I started the simulation once they just, when the ice had been broken. We were about 15, 20 hours into the course. And they had to decide everything. And there can be an embarrassed silence at the beginning of the simulation because the teacher is relinquishing control. And and so I'm doing something with I've actually got my back turned to them, and I'm doing filling in registers or pretending to fill in registers or something like that, because the students will often look to you. Oh, he'll tell us what to do. because that's sort of a paradigm of our educational culture, isn't it? And I don't intervene in this at all, because as soon as I make a suggestion, they will take that as gospel and use it. And I go, no, this is yours. You decide what sector, you decide the name, you decide how big the company is. And I'm not going to intervene because this is yours. So it's a really hard thing for a teacher to do, to step back and not intervene.
It's quite interesting you should say that, because in Andorra, I don't know how much you know of Andorran people or whatever, but they can be quite exceptionally dull and non-forthcoming with ideas, and sometimes you can probably just have like dead silence, and it's awful. And you're speaking about that situation where
They're comfortable with it.
but you're not.
But they are.
But sometimes you find yourself in a situation where it's like, if you don't put something in, but like you say, as soon as you say anything, that's what they write down.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to get something out of them sometimes. And as
Yeah.
Do you know?
What I do is I give them some prompts, as you'll see in a few minutes. But they're not allowed to use those specific ideas. But okay, here we are in Andorra, and they're setting up a company in Andorra. What are the possibilities? What are the most obvious companies here?
banks,
And
tourism,
and
financial institution.
yeah, and
Restaurants.
yeah,
Types.
Hotels.
Yeah.
Contraband.
Yeah. and
That's about it.
but also good transport, logistics. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that's sold here is not manufactured here. It has to be brought in, doesn't it? You know, I don't see lots of agriculture or meat production or all the perfumes, and so there's a massive logistics thing here where things are actually look at all the whiskey shops. My God, yes. So yeah, exactly. So importation, distribution. Okay, well, we've already mentioned about 15 sectors. Yeah, but maybe there could be things that are providing services to tourists, like I don't know. I saw that there are nature trails. There are there could be things where you take people trekking,
Guiding.
yeah, guided tours. So you're just a question of them thinking of something where there could be an international clientele. Yeah. Okay, so this splash simulation, they decided the name, and they. If you just have a quick look at the next page, this was an 8-month simulation.
Oh,
Yeah, you're not going to get an 8-month role play. No, okay. I say 8 months, and that was okay. It was probably about that 8 months. Looks like about 80 hours or 90 hours, but in fact, we went in and out of the simulation because of course, there's language input and practice, and as you will see. But so in the simulation, we were still probably doing about 65 hours in the simulation. Sorry, you had a question.
no, I was gonna say, because I was gonna ask you what's your lead up, because for me that is like a huge amount of information for a student to, one, decide, and two, to be able to convey in English. Like you're saying, okay, so from business meeting, that's already maybe like 2 or 3 hours of preparation.
Okay,
And
so
then you have the next stage of speaking about logistics. If your students are bankers,
yeah.
they don't know anything about this. So okay, we wipe that
Okay,
out.
but they're giving themselves identities within the simulation. I mean, this is B2C1.
Yeah.
Okay, just read that page, please, just to get the gist of it.
We got into it.
Yeah, so
Anything that can go wrong goes wrong.
quite often, I wasn't preparing a lesson, I was preparing a stimulus or giving them a little situation. Like the thing about the letter being delivered by Rama Gardens. Yeah, I mean, okay.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I got the secretary to bring this in and sorry, once they're out, the chief would say, oh, it's you, it's Sean. And he said, what is it? What is it? And so she reads it to the others. And they decide what they're going to do. They decide we'll reply by phone call. They decide we'll arrange a visit. Yeah, it's up to them. All right, so okay, well, let's take the phone call. Let's practice those phone calls. Okay, not bad. Okay, let's change that language. Use this expression. Okay, well, let's do it again. Right, now we've got that right. And within that, okay, there are role plays in that because somebody has to be the ties. So you're giving them a bit of a role there, yeah. Sure, so a role play can exist within the simulation, but we went in and out of it. And as you can see, they're getting lots of language work, but they're also getting presentations, they're getting phone calls, they're getting, analyzing statistics, they're negotiating, freight deals, they're talking about logistics problems, they're talking about sales figures. So they're getting a complete course through the simulation. And they, and it's their company, and they've invested so much themselves in it. There's another one I did was you haven't got a photocopy for that, and it was a month-long simulation, but they were doing 2.5 hours a day, 10 hours a week, 40 hours, and basically the whole thing was from day 2, we were in the simulation, and it was and it involved negotiating wine and spirit prices between North America and Catalonia. And this was a class that was impossible for a normal course because the levels actually went from a kind of low B1 to a C2, unworkable. But if you're using a course book, but we did the whole thing through a simulation, and there were people who were better, higher in terms of their language, and people who were lower, and I gave them different language tasks as we went through it. But what was interesting about this, and this is why I've asked for this, is that on the last day I couldn't do the class because I was flying to Kuala Lumpur, and so I got a teacher called Sue to do the last class for me, and her brief was be there and respond. And after the summer, I asked her to talk about her experience. And this is what she said.
And what was it like as a teacher to do that English for Work class that you did at the end of July?
Right. It was very exciting to be in on the end of this long-running simulation, where the students were much more into the whole process in many ways than I was, because they'd been doing it for some weeks. And when they came to do the role play between the wine vendors and buyers, I saw that very clearly because it was very real to them. It was extremely real to them. And although they took a few minutes in the two groups to plan their strategy for this final meeting, when the details of the purchase would be finalized, they didn't know. They didn't know exactly what they were doing, and I was surprised at how real it was and how much they pressed each other on details in order to get the best deal. And that was, I felt that was very exciting both as a teacher, and I felt it was very immediate for them as students. I think that's probably all I want to say about that.
Anything about the amount of English that was going on?
It was good that they actually, when they were negotiating with the other team, they did actually stop and consult with members of their own team in order to clarify what they had decided earlier, or to think on their feet and respond. And they did that quite naturally, and that's something that does happen in real life negotiations. So I felt that was very realistic.
Anything else, Sue?
Control is a very interesting aspect of all this, because the simulation had taken on a life of its own, and so both students and I, to a certain extent, were responding to something that had a life of its own. I felt that I was in control as a facilitator. I was setting each part of the lesson up, and introducing it and giving instructions and so on. But because the students were so au fait with the whole thing, the simulation, they were able to drop into role very easily. And because it was a simulation, they had control over how they reacted in the role play, which is very interesting, I think. So students had more control than is sometimes the case. And we didn't have time to do the Druskowicz revelation, which was a pity, but we did have a discussion, and the students hypothesized a bit as to how it could end. And then we chatted a bit about it being the last lesson. And
okay, key things that you noticed there.
I like the point that she said at the end, the fact that she said that the students had the chance to hypothesize about the actual ending of this scenario, which I quite liked. I like the fact that she said that it was very real to them. It became its own entity. It existed in their mind. It was happening, and that I really liked. But I have my doubts as to how it would start. I can imagine if you get the right class, it will start very, very kind of like, where's this going?
Yeah.
But then it sort of actually becomes and starts to become something and create something very real.
And I think that's an advantage of doing it over like a long period of time. Because if you do a role play, they're like, okay, like you're the waitress and you're the customer, okay, but I'm never going to be the waitress, so I don't really get it, for example. Whereas when you're doing this, okay, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, it's like, okay, I am more into the thing, and they probably develop more.
Probably become more comfortable, as you said, dropping into the character.
And you're all doing the whole thing in English. And she said, they are really pushing each other on the price. So in other words, they were investing a lot of themselves in it. In a sense, it was a kind of immersion.
How many students were in the group?
5, 6.
How long were the classes?
2.5 hours
per day.
So it was 7 to 9:30 p.m.
Monday to Thursday.
Wow.
Yeah,
Every day.
Monday to Thursday.
It's pretty intense.
So it was a 40-hour course, and you get an intensive. It was a July course. Yeah.
I think when she said, finally, it sounds like she was kind of just sat back and just watched the whole thing. And she said they were thinking on their feet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what else do you need?
You said your criteria was to like go and observe and just sort of mediate, not really get too involved. So.
Yeah.
it's well prepared, it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All those things we say about language learning, as the learner-centered language learning, immersion, the needs emerging, all of these things were happening through the simulation. Yeah. So the objections in the sense of value. How do you start this? If you turn over and look at the preparation for simulation page. That's all I gave them at the beginning. So this was, so you're going to be in a simulation. It's going to be X, I don't know, roughly X hours long. I didn't really know. And then I made myself absent, emotionally absent from them, and let them get on with it. And if they wanted to look at me for inspiration, they got the back of my head. Because this is as I said before, this is the moment when as a teacher you begin to relinquish control.
And then you get a report to your boss saying, teacher does not pay attention to class.
Teacher asleep.
I was interested in how you said they started to negotiate on the price, and they sort of, I mean, did you have to prod them a little bit in some ways to go, well, go and look on the net and find the price of wine in Italy or whatever? Did you sort of have to?
That in a sense.
Or did they just invent it and sort of, well, it's $20?
That was their homework. So Smith's job is to, his task for Monday is to go and find prices for these things and then present that information to the rest of the class on Monday. Yeah. And Robert's job is to do something else. To find out about, tax or tasting or tax or whatever. Or to find something about,
So you make it very brief.
Palette size, and they come back and they have a reason for doing this. They have a reason for talking to each other, and they have a reason for listening. How different is that from, okay, guys, I want you to turn to page 25, and we're going to do listening, 3.17. Okay, I
think there's
it's all coming, it's emerging from the course book, or it's emerging from something that John and Liz Sawes wrote in their cottage in Oxfordshire 9 years ago. Whereas this is emerging from the learners.
Yeah. I think to give each, if you give each person a specific homework, then they're going to do the homework, because if not, they're letting the side down.
Exactly.
So, going back to that.
And I think you need this kind of like more realistic stuff, because if it's like, okay, invent it all, it kind of becomes a bit too impossible. Like, okay, we sell cheese at €2 a cheese. And then it's like, after a while, it's kind of not really feasible because it's not a realistic plan, and then they're kind of like, I don't really see the point. I don't really care. We have another line of business in ham, for example. And if it becomes too much of an invention, they're kind of like, I don't really see where it's going. So I think you need to keep it kind of constrained within a certain situation.
Yeah. So I mean, as a teacher, what you can do to like help help the wheels turn, so you come up and you throw in a situation, like the thing about the Rama Gardens letter, or it could be, but they receive an email or something like that, and saying a whole consignment of their cheese is going to be returned because it was found to be contaminated with whatever.
Right.
And so my preparation would be to find those little problems or challenges,
So
to throw at them, and then they decide how they're going to respond.
So it's over the months, these kind of problems that arose over your kind of span of work.
Sometimes they were mine, sometimes they were theirs.
Sorry. No, I was going to say, this could be an interesting project for your legal English.
Yeah,
group.
because we have this in the book. We have the same thing. We have case studies, which we do. But it's quite time consuming, and we only have an hour lesson every week. but
Yeah.
it is something I want to do. Yeah, because at the end of each section is like, okay, here's your legal documents. What are you going to do? Write your letter to the for example.
Yeah, what I find in terms of, when it works and when it doesn't work, because there is no universe, this doesn't fit all situations. This works when there is a nucleus of 4 or 5 good attenders.
The class dynamic.
If you don't turn up.
Yeah, who
Exactly.
exactly. So if you and I think you need with an hour a week, I probably wouldn't do it myself.
Yeah.
But if the cloud, I think minimum 3 hours a week, absolute minimum. This group came 3 hours a week. The group that Sue was talking about were doing 2.5 hours a day over a month, so it was a 40-hour course.
Quite like the idea. I mean, I don't know if it's been tried. I quite like the idea of if you have 2 classes that you make. For example, if Smith has a class and I have a class, and we're like, they say, okay, right, well, we're the Thais and you're the English or whatever, and we sort of throw different things at each other. Obviously, not so ridiculously complicated that it just causes chaos. But we refuse to negotiate because you wore a black hat, or so something cultural or.
And I think also that helps to make it because. In a lot of my classes, like if you're having a debate, the students don't really want to argue with each other. And after it, whereas if you have 2 different classes, it's like, yes, we're a class and you're a class, so we have that kind of competition.
Good idea.
So, one thing you notice in the early on in the splash simulation is that there was a negotiation and they didn't agree. If you look at the course books that we have, everything has a happy ending.
It's terrible.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Everybody's good. Everybody's a nice person, and they agree. Oh yes, very good. Okay, well, blah blah blah. Right, but real life ain't like that all the time, So so we talked about why negotiate? Well, well, we didn't reach a deal. I mean, it happens in real life. All right, what could we do next time to increase the chances of a deal being reached? But the thing of the deal not being reached, and that was language input, reached agreement. That was the language work collocation that we did because it had emerged. That came from the students in negotiating, not from me, not from a course book. So they were responsible for that. And that's interesting from in the in a kind of teaching situation point of view. The outcome was not decided by me or the course material; it was decided by them. Okay.
Did you find that any of the students were particularly dominant, or for no real genuine reason pedantic, or do you know what I mean? Kind of, they just decide, well, I'm kind of smarter, so I'm just going to cause trouble. But not in a bad way, just in a kind of, but in a domineering way, and therefore the other students felt a little bit.
Yeah, like you're having a negotiation of a price, and they're like, no, it's too low.
Okay.
Like I want to make it higher, and they never give up.
Okay, I have a magic solution to that. Somebody proposes something, and everybody has one of these, and everybody has one of these. So here's my dominant student, and he makes this proposal, and then we've established, this is, we're all in this deal. We decide who agrees with his proposal. So you can vote him. You can,
democracy.
Talk. You can vote him. You can vote him down. And they love this. Any kind of the greyest bankers you can imagine will crack up when they do this. Where they torpedo somebody's idea. And then you say, okay, 4 of you voted against, 1 of you voted for. Can you just briefly summarize your reasons? Or here's a writing task. Okay. One of you is the secretary writing down the minutes of this meeting. And you have to record neutrally, factually, what happened. bam, bam, bam. Or you have a personal diary and you write emotionally how you felt when these swines overturned your fantastic idea that was going to save the company.
That's cool. I like that idea because I think it gives people who are quite a power.
Yeah. So,
and it's sort of getting too ridiculous.
so as the teacher, you're thinking, okay, well, right, what's the next stage of this? So how often do we do the kind of job interview lesson? I guess fine, great. Maybe you're very useful, but okay. Let's look at let's make it more realistic. What comes after the job interview? The people or person who conducted the interview have to decide which candidate they're going to offer the job to. So they have a meeting. Then what happens? They phone that person. That's realistic, and that person decides if he or she is going to accept the job or not. And the people out there, the interviewers, will of course have a plan B. So if not this person, we'll then offer it to that person. That's what happens in the real world. And so the first person who's offered the job may say, "Well, can I think about it for 2 days?" Or may say, "Yeah, great." Or may say, "Actually, no. The salary wasn't high enough," or whatever. Or I don't know. And then and then maybe they phone the second person. Okay, what happens then? Let's say you say yes, I accept the job. What do they do? Okay, well let's just put that in writing because it has to be in writing, and so that they'll send a little email. Thank you, Smith, for accepting our offer. Just to confirm, blah blah blah. See you in the office at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Reply. Just to confirm that. So all this is realistic, and it's involving multiple skills.
So like second interview.
Yeah, we're doing the phone calls, we're doing the writing, and in a sense, what we have here in science, we've co-constructed discourse. So what I'm saying here is in response to that, and that was in response to that. And of course, I think what happens before the job interview? Okay, you phone the people to come in. You agree on a time. How is Tuesday 11:30 for you? Blah blah blah. That doesn't work for me because. And then you go back further to the whole the letter.
Job offer.
Well, exactly, creating the job profile. Putting it in some kind of website or newspaper. Creating your CV. What are the good things about? Let's look at writing the CV. And there's the letter of application. And then you get all these letters of application, and they decide which ones they're going to call in. The long list of them, to shortlist these people, and so on. But making it as realistic as possible. What's the next stage? What would happen?
I think everyone has practiced interviews in class at one stage or another, so.
Well,
I just wanted.
no, I just talking.
Okay.
Cool. I really like that sort of.
Yeah, it's cool. The job interview one is also really good because I think that many people could relate to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
More than, for example, creating your own company, it's also really good. But I think that many people wouldn't really feel identified with this. Whereas a job interview, whether you are the person interviewing or the person that is being interviewed, is something that everyone has related to.
Yeah.
I think the long-term one works with just like a good level class that maybe you've been doing books. I'm just thinking personally now of some of my classes that could kind of try to run with that a little bit over the course of the year, and it gives them sort of something to sort of a bit more different than the whole, book, and something to go with, and then just to expand the class or as little as you feel that you need to.
I think it also depends what they do in their job.
Absolutely.
Like if you have people who are
Well, then we can
just
tailor it, can't we?
a banker, like a cashier, it's like they're not going to have enough knowledge necessarily of all the different aspects to be able to.
Yeah, but that's where research comes in. It's more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you can tailor it,
but
can't
like,
you? You
is
go,
that
okay, this
relevant?
person's strong point to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
This is a big example.
I like the idea of having to do the job spec and then the CV as well, and then the letter to invite them in for the interview. It's not just an interview, but all the other bits and pieces that go around it.
I like the simulation idea, and I especially like the simulation idea of one class against another class.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I like that, because I think that would give it that
An edge.
added motivation.
Yeah.
Added motivation to be like,
Yeah.
well, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it well.
One class could just be people looking for the job, and the
For
then
example,
could be the
something like that, yeah.
committee that decides to.
Well, then the correspondence becomes very real, doesn't it?
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
correspondence of
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah.
It's like my class emails your class, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, so we had an email return from blah, 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 and what do they
Yeah.
say?
It could be done. I had a situation where a guy wanted a job in New Zealand and he had to do his interview by Skype. So I was preparing him. So actually your class could have an interview with my class by Skype
Exactly.
rather
The
than,
same thing with doing phone
I don't think
But
we
the telephone
interact
call-
in that way enough that we could.
The last simulation I did was about 6 months ago, where I had a class, a fantastic class that was pretty high level, and they decided to set up an olive oil company based near Tarragona. And so I brought, once they had decided that, I brought in some stuff about different varieties of olive oil, different countries that produce olive oil. How is Spain doing? Is it gaining market share or losing market share? Because actually, what's happening in that sector is a lot of new countries are coming on stream and actually exporting quite aggressively. Like places like Australia, Morocco, and so it's one thing to sit back and say, ours is the best because it's ours. I think, okay, fine, okay. Let's look at the international market. You've got to do more. You've got so let's look at the language of advertising, or language of marketing, language of promotion, and let's if we can, what can we say that's factual about it? So okay, we will talk about the tasting. We're also talking about what temperature does it burn? What are the varieties? And so also looking in terms of language, looking at the process of making things, looking at passive voice, blah blah blah, and at the same time I brought in this stuff that there was where new regulations came in force a year ago in Europe that you used to have your olive oil in a container in a set in a restaurant, but now you can't do that anymore. You can't use refillable olive oil things. It has to have a label on it. And it can be larger or smaller doses, but and so for the olive oil industry that was a revolution, because suddenly the kind of packaging they were doing for airlines, or was now having to do how do they do that for restaurants? So you've got this restaurant chain and you're negotiating a price. What's rooted? What's your packaging price? And people in these English work classes have experience of the real world. They hang on, what kind of packaging is best? I can find out. Okay, do that for homework. What kind of distribution deal can we have? I know something about it. And you can actually play with the knowledge that the students have. Somebody works in insurance. I don't know. Can we bring that in somehow? Somebody works in marketing. Can we bring in that? Somebody works in finance. Can we bring that in some way? And so you appeal to the students' expertise. On Tuesday, could you give us a presentation about the way that works, please? Yeah, sure. Great. I know that, but I don't know the English for that. Okay, and so you've got a reason. You've got a learning need created. Oh God, I could talk all day about this. I'm going to do something else. Moving on. Next page. Last half hour or so. So we're talking about progress here. Could you look at those comments? Okay, so Smith, can I ask you to sit over there with Tess, or stand over there with Tess, whichever you prefer? And
I'll stand.
okay. Okay, so can I have 1, 2, 3, 2, 2. I'd like you just to choose 2 or 3 of those quotes that you think are interesting and just debate them from a thing. 3, 2, 2.
And select them and discuss them.
Yeah, a couple that you think are interesting.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Why did that catch your attention?
Because no one has actually asked me this, but I think I'm going to ask you this. And this one was already
Okay.
and I think that was one.
No, but that's what we can get at that.
So one-to-one thinking more progress than one-to-one. I, depending on the objective of the students, might think that at least in the scenario which is that before, that it creates a really good dynamic for students to feel comfortable with these languages, and also for them to realize that it's not only me. You know, I can relate to other
Depends on the person. I'm thinking of Ramon. He was struggling. Yeah, when you put alone,
If the student who says this, they're stuck.
some
Maybe you're learning, maybe you need to change.
whereas Caroline, you must,
Write down the
they would struggle on it. And they come, one doesn't come and they come individually.
If you have this
When
question,
you put it together, finally they progress.
and then obviously by having a lovely.
any preparation in the next.
As an instructor,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that, I think that but obviously it depends on the group, and I would think that this, my point of view is more with the kids and adults.
what do you think is like the weaknesses are?
And let's say I am learning English in this institute, so I want to understand the first for
And like, okay.
That's right. Okay.
I hope not my
What do you want to say about that? I don't like that.
And it's a difficult situation because that's happened. I have students that I've been working with for a long time and
All right, that raises another question. I once heard a teacher say she was shocked people were spending more than 3 years learning. That how long will it take? No, not like that. But people, if somebody came into the academy, okay, I want to learn English. How many years do I need? Where do you start?
well, I would start off.
If you say 10 years, okay, I'll come twice a week.
Sometimes.
If you say 1 year, 2 years, 3 years.
They're not really.
Well, then you have to go into individual, yeah.
Or if you started to do numbers, how much money you going to spend to learn English? Really important money. So, you know,
That is.
yeah, other people can learn English very quickly. So if you don't understand, if you start learning English, you lose sight of it. So this 10-year concept, I have been learning 10, or I am learning 10 years. I am learning English since 10 years. You have to find out what you've been doing for 10 years.
Yeah. I can say that one of the students that we have, not as a rule, but for one of the students that we had to start, that are still struggling with basic communication. And they spend a lot of time outside of the classroom for study, so there's also like,
I have students and I ask them, and they're surprisingly clever. I'm not impressed with their level. I say, how long have you been? 4 years here, 2 years there, 6, 7 years, and you don't say, oh, you wonder what you'll be doing for 6 years. And then that's, problem.
Yeah, I think back at this beginning, you know, these skills are connected.
But how far back do we go?
so like, how many cycles are there?
How do you break it?
How about this, that's when an exam is
Maybe
kind of
at the
handled.
beginning, maybe it's just simple, simple things that you forget.
What
Well,
about
it depends on the
that?
that by one thing, let's just say there's one exercise and writing as an excuse. And then I was about to say, I think that one
The second one.
Maybe we should put them into more.
Okay. Some people are really comfortable, really happy with grammar exercises. When you put them in a situation where they've got to speak,
Yeah, because you have to be confident as well, some grammar. Yesterday I was on, I went. Maybe I have to make finding more.
It's much better than She said, I hate mistakes. Maybe it's why?
So maybe
And
we
I
have
read
recognition
the
happen.
And then the other two, one has good stuff. So what I'm saying is different skills. And really separate certain students. Some are great with grammar, some might be good with but identifying native
I think.
So
what are we doing? We're trying to give a balanced English.
I don't find
Or are we
it
just comparing
one
analysis?
or two classes that they
Part
go
of the success, or-
Yeah. But it's like, I guess you.
It's fun. The aim of our work is what are the many products? Any progress is progress?
Yeah, I know I'm fluent, I can function and I.
There's some
I have
progress.
like, it's, I don't care about
Whether
that.
it's,
Some progress is good progress.
even if it's just being more comfortable in speaking, so you don't necessarily have to go scared, just you need to say, okay, that's gonna be a point where you go on. No, because I do agree with bad habits.
Okay.
That's what they would do.
Right, would anybody like to share what they talked about in their pair or group?
Well, it was, the first sentence that, and everyone's heard this, I am learning English since 10 years, why can't I make the first certificate? And we agreed that we thought it was more, there's like a mental block. You have to kind of go into, okay, why can't, if this person has been learning for 10 years, why can't, so it's not just, they're not, there's something more psychological than academic going on.
Yeah, because they have the question in their head, why can't I do this?
Yeah.
They're kind of going to the class with negative aspect.
Or maybe you said, no, I'm not putting you in a first certificate class. Maybe the director of studies or the teacher said, no.
And we said they need to look at their, clearly, if they, for example, they have been doing the first certificate for 10 years and they failed every single year, it's like, okay, but let's stop, how are you learning this? Like, for example, a lot of students really find things like gap fill very easily. And then it's like, okay, but you're not understanding the concept or the meaning of this sentence as a whole, you're just spotting when I can put the word in. Or maybe, okay, you always just read a piece of text and never like look at the meaning.
Never analyze and find the keywords or whatever.
So it's like finding a different way, okay, maybe you always learn by reading, let's try listening.
Yep.
Think of a phrase related to this.
The other perspective of that is how much of the time are they actually dedicated to it? So, for example,
Yeah.
they say 1 hour a week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What does 10 years mean?
Like Alex and I'll tell you from people on the hill from skiing. They'll go, I've been skiing for 20 years. No, you've actually been skiing for about a few hours a year over 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a big difference.
Yeah.
You're doing 20 seasons and doing, a few hours, and half of that was spent in the bar and the other in the spa. And the thing is, it's actually intensive. And I've got a student I've had for the last 4 years since we've been open. And lovely woman, but literally it's every day is like Groundhog Day. She does 2 hours a week for 4 years, and I promise you, if you gave her now, like some basic things, you'd be shocked. And for me personally, I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst teacher in the world, because it's impossible not to get more out of that. But it's just literally like that, in and out. So, and she doesn't think in given homework, I've tried every sort of different scenario to try to get it, to do it.
I think we're actually merging into question one here. I mentioned a couple of hours ago that I was teaching the boss of BBVA for Catalonia and Balearic Islands, Mr. Navas, his secretary and his chauffeur. And he was pre-intermediate level. And he had classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8:30 to 10. 8:30 to 10. And after 2 years of my teaching, I would say his level was exactly the same. Am I a crap teacher? Heavens no. Heavens no. No, but okay. What were the things that impinged on that? One, all right. Quite often classes were cancelled. Regularly, I would be waiting in the lobby for him to come in, for him to finish key things, and so that 90 minutes was probably an average of about 60, 70, and he couldn't do anything between class and class. Call it homework, call it what you like. He was a very, very busy man, and the things I suggested, he didn't take up on. So okay, we have this very frequent disjunct between the teaching and the learning. They're very different processes which have almost no point of contact. But what I would say is that as a result of what he did with me, he maintained his level of English. He successfully maintained his level of English. And had he not been paying for those classes, he wouldn't have done that.
That's progress.
So no, it's not progress. And that's the point. The point is that maintenance may be.
That may be progress.
Well,
some people say, look, I learned English 20 years ago and I don't want to lose what I've got.
Yeah, but okay.
That's progress.
But I'm saying maintenance may well be a perfectly valid goal.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should beat ourselves for that. And like the kind of the learner you were talking about, maybe she comes back year after year, she's happy. Because she's not making progress. Her English is not getting better, probably, but she is successfully maintaining her level, and that's good. So that's good.
Zero.
But there is
just to finish this line of Smith, that I reckon that a learner who is not exposed to a lot of English out there in the real world needs between 1.5 and 2 hours a week of class to maintain their level. 1 hour a week for me is not progress. Okay, maybe very valid in terms of other things, but really 2 hours and above is when you could begin to talk about the possibility of progress. But we're founded on this myth of progress, and I think it harms us. And in a sense, it harms the learners. So nobody talks to learners about this, generally speaking.
Yeah, right.
Everybody expects progress, isn't it?
Yeah, they do.
If I wanted to learn Italian, the first question I'm going to say to you is, if I come to you and you're a teacher, how long is it going to take me before I can speak Italian? That should be an obvious question.
You've got to give your student the answer that I give for the rest of your life.
A long time.
I said, well, how long is it going to take?
They ask you that question? You can't say year, 2 years, 3.
No.
I get asked, how long would it take to get to like
A good level of
a
that.
good basic, advanced, but a good basic level? I said,
Depends on you.
Well, but then you come in with your common European frameworks and your scales. All right, where are you now? Where do you want to get? Okay, this is about 400 hours. How do you want to do that? Do you want to do 10 hours a week, 4 hours a week? But this 400 hours is structured on the idea of you actually taking in, you acquiring, what we're teaching.
Cool.
And we don't, and we, I think as a profession, we need to be a little bit more upfront,
Honest.
with learners about this.
Right. Alex and I kind of jump these two together, like the aim of our, like number one and the last one, basically, like the aim of our work for learners to make progress. And then we kind of just combined it with the last one too. It's like, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
And try and efforts and efforts and efforts. And if the person just can't retain it, or they just don't do enough work themselves, there's nothing you can do at the end of the day. You've got to, you know, like you say, you're sort of just maintaining a very, whatever, you know, basic level.
But I think we need to say, okay, I'll stand up here and I'll do the teaching. Fine, but you have to do the learning. Isn't that easy to say? And that, it's quite shocking for for a learner to hear that. But I think they should hear it a bit more often. The learning is your job.
And giving that, I always give mine. So up here, like everybody skis, and give them the analogy, like, okay, you're gonna learn to ski, you go to the slopes for 1 hour on a Saturday morning, okay? Then you don't do anything for the week. When you go again, are you gonna fall over? Yes, because you're back at square one. And I was like, okay, it's the same thing with English. If you're not gonna do anything during the week, you're gonna fall over again. You're not gonna remember anything from the week before, and it's exactly the same thing. And they're like, yes, it's true, maybe I should do some more things. Later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do say to my students, I say, if you don't do the homework that I give you and you don't do the exercises, you're not gonna pass the exam.
Yeah.
Exactly. But everybody feels bad when somebody's been doing English for 2, 3, 4 years and no progress has been made. You feel bad as a teacher. She feels bad as a student. I've got some really nice students, and you know.
So the aim of this then is to give you some tools to defuse that situation. Yeah. Okay. Could you? So does anybody want to say anything about the others?
One point, sorry, which I thought was interesting was one-to-ones tend to make more progress than groups. We work with quite small groups, and I don't think that this is always the case. But a lot depends on the group.
Always is a key word in that, isn't it? Yeah. Tend to.
Yeah, tend to. I would actually, I don't agree with you.
Yeah, I don't agree with that either.
No, I don't agree with you.
Oh, you don't agree with
No,
me?
I think that one-to-ones, I feel that my one-to-ones make a lot more progress than my group classes.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think maybe if you have like intermediate advanced, but if you have a pre-intermediate level group, I think it would be a little bit more.
Yeah, I think low levels need groups, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I've had both situations.
So I think that with the one-to-ones, maybe it's just an impression, but we get through not only a lot more material, we actually we're getting through the material, and at the same time, we have time to do other things.
Yeah, but yours are also mostly teens, which is different.
Yeah.
With teens, I agree with this statement, because teens, when they're with a group, they're clowny, and when they're alone, they're usually boom, 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 boom. But adults, it depends.
We will be talking about one-to-ones on Friday, but yeah, look, imagine, okay, we have this group situation, 7, in most places, 7 will be a really small group. And you go to British Council, and the classes are 22, 24. You go to Escuela Oficial, and the classes are 20 to 30. Universities, you have a lecture room, and so 7 is a pretty privileged group. But imagine this is a one-to-one situation, and I've got Smith here, and he's getting 60 minutes of my time. Okay, in an hour in a group, how much time could each person actually be talking? Even if you do pair work, even if you do trios, the yield is far greater.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, at the bottom of the page, could you just individually fill in those 2 things if you would like to?
Both sections.
Please.
Jazz.
All I can hear right now is jazz. You put that on to distract us or what?
No,
No.
left brain, right brain. It's to engage your right hemisphere.
No brain.
Me too.
Okay. Who would like to share what they have for the first one?
Well, me, instead of selecting groups, I selected specific students.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which is learner, yeah, learners, yeah, okay.
some of you guys from substituting some of my classes, my Tuesday, Thursday group, my 1 o'clock group, where I have Albert and Monica, and then I have Richard and Luis. So there's a clear difference between Albert and Monica and Richard and Luis. And I think that the principal factor is that Albert and Monica, they're here because they have to be here, but they don't want to be here, but their company is making them be here. Albert has been progressing at a painfully slow rhythm. He does all of the work in advance. He comes to class with the whole unit done, everything checked, all of the workbooks. I mean, he must be dedicating it 2-3 hours outside of the classroom. And I haven't seen progress.
Or somebody doing it for him.
No, for sure no. Because he gets really frustrated. He's like, I don't understand. I don't know. Why is it this? And
I have exactly the same problem with Sonia.
Yeah.
She does exactly the same thing, comes with the unit entirely done, and it's because I think.
Are they husband and wife?
No.
There is a Sonia and the husband doesn't
No.
come here.
No.
Just trying to get
I
ahead
think
of
it's like, they look at it in their way before doing it in class, and because they do this, they're already preconditioned when they arrive in class to how they're supposed to understand what they've done, and
Maybe.
when it's not the right explanation or not the right vision for them, that just throws them for a bigger loop. And I think that it's good that they're, like, on the one side, it's very admirable and very good that they're looking at it, in advance and taking the time to, but at the same time, they're looking at it without necessarily the right tools to be able to do it in the correct way, and
Yeah.
therefore, it just crosses cables.
Yeah, but Monica is also similar. I don't know. She doesn't do the work in advance, but that's just, and the levels have progressed. Like they started off more or less. Okay, Albert was always a little bit weaker, but and there's just a big difference now between Richard and Luis and Albert and Monica. And next year, it's impossible they can continue together. I know that the company is going to say they need to be doing year 2 FC, and it's completely impossible.
But if you look, 2 years ago, I had Monica.
No, yeah, they have.
I
Yes.
had Monica, Louise, Joseph,
Yeah.
and the head of human resources, and they were all in the same group.
Yeah.
And now you have Monica, and you look at Joseph and Louise now, okay, Joseph is stronger than Louise.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. But I think,
Monica was kind of
I
the
mean, I
same.
think this is one of the points that I said the students' implication and drive, like personal implication and personal drive to actually, put in the work, put in the necessary work. Of course, I think everybody's a world when it comes to languages, and some people have an incredible facility for languages, and some people it's like an enormous obstacle for them. But if you put in, the dedication, the drive, the implication to progress, even if it's not leaps and bounds, you will see progress at your level, progress at your rhythm, at a stage.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that these guys have progressed. Just the other ones have progressed so much faster that they do seem a little bit behind, because it's true that 2 years ago they were at an elementary level.
Okay, so the guys who are progressing faster, what are they doing, or what is it about them?
They're not doing anything. Zero work outside of the classroom. So I don't understand.
I think
some of them are, I don't know.
one of the underrated secrets of doing or progressing is actually how much exposure you receive to English every day or during the week in your outside life, and that exposure is actually not imposed by a teacher. It's rather exposure that you choose to have to someone, because you will be interested in what you want to be interested in.
I think to have other interests in English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So you watch a show or you watch a movie or you watch a report on something in English, but that something is interesting to you. So you automatically, your brain is open to receiving stuff.
Yeah.
If I give you an article to read, and it's, as I was saying today, about the Queen of England, well, you're probably going to read the article and forget about it immediately because it's not interesting to you. If I say to you, look for an article that's interesting for you, and then come back and tell me about it, well, 80% of the article you're going to remember and you're going to use that.
Jane Ellis, one of the co-inventors of the task-based approach, she says that there are 3 things that are necessary. One is motivation.
Yeah.
2 is exposure, and we've actually covered those things very nicely in what we just said. And the 3rd, which we haven't covered quite so much, is the reflection.
Oh yeah,
Interestingly, teaching is not one of her 3 key things. Yeah, but this reflecting on what you have understood, reflecting on your output, and making adjustments to that. She says that the 3, exactly, 3 could involve feedback, and that could involve a teacher.
Basically, those are the points that I wrote about one a student that I shared with Bobby, who's actually notoriously, possibly the most annoying student that we have in the academy. But
inappropriate.
I've managed this year to just completely get past all these things that kind of should bother me. Right, but the guy he's been to America. He's been to, and he's not rich. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he's properly immersed himself in every way. He's been to every single free conversation class we have, every single activity that we have outside. He's the first one to sign up, and he refuses to speak in any other language. If I see him in the street, if I see him in class, he's the same with Bobby. We share the class, and David. And as much as his character, his personality might, probably wind you up. I got nothing but applause for the guy this year, and I told him so.
Good progress.
And I've seen just such a massive progress. The guy was practically just couldn't even pronounce his name when he came.
Yeah.
And he's now just trying. And he makes lots of mistakes, but
I think
Having a little
the thing
confidence.
of catching somebody doing the right thing is something we don't do. Sometimes in class, whether it's a one-to-one or a group class, I'll say, hey, hey Bobby, what you said there was the best I've ever heard you speaking. And that person will just say, in the glow of it, or you'll say to a student, okay, there's some imperfections in this writing thing, but actually it's the best thing I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that's the best way to get people through exams. proper motivation
Yeah.
is.
Could you just turn over and look at the next? Okay, these are just two reports I wrote. Two people in the same class called Veritas Media. That's the VM. So you've got the attendance there, and you've got two reports. What can we say about these two people? Is everybody okay with the Spanish there? Amy, feel free to ask any questions.
This one is gonna be getting a phone call from the boss.
All right, what can we say about Ruth? What can we say about Jessica? I mean, attendance is not the key thing. You know, you can actually see that Jessica's attendance is almost 10% lower. But what's going on between these two learners?
I think that honestly, I think the key sentence here is buscar oportunidades para usar el
Yeah.
móvil ha sido presentado.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to that.
She's experimenting with language, and she's saying, "Is it?" Jessica's saying, "Is it okay to say?" Or she'll take something that we was in a text we've just seen, and she'll try to use it, or something that we did on Tuesday, she'll try to use on Thursday.
That's actually just going back one page. One of the points that I said is being adventurous.
Risk taking. Yeah. Okay, something that we mentioned a moment ago when we talked about, somebody said it's imposed on them by the company, blah, blah, blah. 3 days a week I've been going to a company called Revlon. You know, Revlon? You know, health, beauty, and it's an American company. The Spain part of that was independent. It was a separate company called Colomer. But they were taken over by Revlon about 3 or 4 years ago, mainly for their experience and expertise in hair care. And so, basically, internal communications are in English, and it's a hugely international company. They have a presentation in New York. They have a fashion show in Milan. They've got people coming in from Australia. They've got visits to the factory in Poland and Italy. They have messages from human resources in the UK, and so they're exposed to a lot of English depending on the person, exposed to English a lot in their normal working day. So that, in a sense, can take the place of homework sometimes, something we said before. But there's one guy in one group, Mark, who said that in his department, regulatory, they've actually now got a new staff member from Poland. She doesn't speak very much Spanish, let alone Catalan. As I said, every Friday they're going to speak English in the department. And this is okay. So this is like that extra step, isn't it? They say, all right, it's not, oh God, bloody English, and take it so, let's speak English every Friday. And those are the key motivating things that are going to make a difference. Anything else you want to say about Ruth and Jessica? Notice for both of them, I'm recommending something that they can do over the summer. So I'm not just saying, well done, Jessica, Ruth, come on, pull your socks up. I'm actually saying, okay, and here's something you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to watch the news in English. I don't know. Seriously, I'm not of the opinion that CNN or BBC are particularly good ones to watch for a variety of different reasons. Euronews in English is very good. Very easy.
Watch or read.
Or read,
yeah.
One of the points that I put is to read.
Sorry?
One of the points that I put in the 5 key things is to read as much as you can, whether you understand it or not.
Yeah.
Because I think that people will read something and they skip, and also reading out loud.
Yeah.
If a person's struggling to speak, I always try to get them to read out loud, because their brain automatically tells them it's incorrect. Whereas if you read in just like, you blase over the word, I understand it.
Yeah.
But you didn't actually pronounce it, and therefore your brain doesn't register that you said it wrong.
Yeah.
And
Reading,
you always pronounce it wrong.
reading is really, I started with the first group preparation, and Frederick, he just goes to Pyrenees and he buys a book in English and he reads it. And in the beginning he didn't understand that much. His vocabulary now has surpassed the strongest students. So he might not, his grammar may not be 100%, but his vocabulary is, he has synonyms.
And fluency as well.
Is amazing.
Yeah, on BBC you can watch the 1 Minute World News, and then there are literally hundreds of little things you can watch, little reports, 2 minutes long, of things that I'm interested in. I'm interested in, I don't know, the Greek crisis. Lots of little reports now. Or I'm interested, or I want to hear Australian accents. Okay, let's go to the Australia section. Where you have political parties, overthrowing their own leader again and again and again. Short and short news reports where you're getting the paralinguistic clues to help you because you're watching the person speak. But you can also be exposed to a wide variety of accents. That's fantastic. Native and non-native, and also almost always there's a print story, and quite often the print story will have lots of almost be the same thing, lots of reported and direct speech in that.
We tried something in our group. We watched The Good Wife at home and discussed it in class, rather than the BBC, which can be a bit dry for some people. This is a sort of, the program is about a lawyer, a woman, but they watch it in Spanish, because when we talked about series, I watched A Good Wife. The Game of Thrones is a bit more complicated. They watch these series in Spanish, and I said, what about this particular episode? Let's watch it in English together, all of us at home, and then we talk about it in class. And that was easier for them to do than to watch the Greek crisis.
Yeah, I always like if they start to watch like films and stuff, I'm like, okay, watch something you've seen already in Spanish, and you already understand what they're going to say, and then you're like, okay, this is how they say it in English.
Exactly.
Because if they watch it in English at first, I understand it's like super frustrating, because you're like, I don't really get the story, I'm missing like a lot of things. Okay, I've picked out like 3 or 4 words, and it's a long, an hour and a half is too long to do something which you're not enjoying.
The worst thing for me is Spanish subtitles. Whatever you do, don't read Spanish subtitles.
That hinders learning.
Yeah.
As soon as you can start thinking English.
But put the subtitles in English, maybe.
From elementary to advanced, Peppa Pig. I recommend Peppa Pig because it's short. Peppa Pig is an animation. Okay.
It's about pig.
And you have no excuse not to be able to watch it, because you can watch it with your kids. Say, I have kids, I can't do homework. Watch Peppa Pig, they will enjoy it.
Where did you find this?
On the internet.
Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
And I had an advanced student, he came in, and I knew the Chinese name, but the first thing he said to me was, squishy squashy my little puddle. Fantastic. Okay,
You busted that.
yeah, there's so much vocabulary because it's aimed at children. It's like it's really descriptive. Like a paper is twinkly and
YouTube or in YouTube now?
Yeah.
Yeah, YouTube.
And doing a lot of my students are like, they know a word because they're like, oh yeah, they sing it in that song, and I'm like, okay, yeah, but like explain the story of the song, and then they have to understand the lyrics. Okay, often it's not really
Appropriate.
or a good story, but
How do you translate that?
yeah.
Okay, if you turn over, there are 2 more reports. And what do you notice about these 2 students?
both of them are very motivated.
Yeah.
Is one lazier than the other?
Sorry?
Is one lazier than the other?
Does anybody agree with that?
The question says, siempre y cuando está dispuesto a hacer los deberes, suggesting that she's not dispuesta a hacer los deberes. Whereas the other one is a pleasure to have in my class, okay?
One has a very specific goal.
No debe relajarse.
And I would say that probably learner, or Elena was in a one-to-one class.
Yeah.
And Juliet was in a group class.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, sort of highlighting strengths, yeah, very clear, and also like, highlighting the importance of motivation, also saying what they're good at, and where possible, saying where they need more work, and saying something they can do about it. And also, talking about objectives. Yeah, so okay, look, this is something you can be aiming for.
Yeah, it's a very long void to fill, isn't it, for someone?
Yeah.
Can be.
Yeah, I in the last class of the year, a couple of those recently, I actually talked about, all right, just get it, in your pairs or groups, just tell the other person what you are going to do to keep your English alive this summer. Like, oh yes, and people always say some interesting things. And oh, that's a good idea. And then I give them a document with like 25 things you could do, and you read through that and say, okay, which of those are realistic for you? Yeah, if it's not realistic, don't bother. What could you do? And then you show them on the ground. At the beginning of the course you were here, and now you're here. Okay, 3 months of doing nothing. When we start again in October, you'll be here. That's a problem, isn't it? Okay, that's a challenge, and that's an opportunity. What can we do? What can we do but have lunch?
Lunch. Did you say lunch?
Lunch.